Hi, welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are doing well. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Just a quick reminder before I get into it, I make true crime and occasionally commentary content. So if that's something you think you enjoy, consider subscribing and liking this video if you feel inclined to. Today I'm going to be talking about the brutal murder of 19-year-old Serenity, Serena McKay, and how her murder was basically live streamed and uploaded to Facebook. Let's get into it. Serena Chelsea McKay, also known as Serenity by family and friends, was born on September 30th, 1997 to parents Dolores Daniels and Harvey McKay. Serena's great aunt Barb Bitternose said that she preferred the name Serenity, so that's what I'm going to be referring to her as throughout the remainder of this video. Serenity was First Nations. In Canada, there are three main Indigenous groups. So there's First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, and then within each distinction, there are many bands and different groups. As detailed in her public obituary, Serena had 4 siblings. She had one sister named Michelle McKay, and then 3 brothers, Joshua Daniel, Alexander McKay, and Jonathan McKay. It appears that from the different last names and other information, such as Dolores stating that she only had one daughter, that some of her siblings were half siblings, though I'm not sure which ones, as I couldn't find anywhere online which one was birthed by Dolores or was on her father's side, Harvey's side. It seemed that Serenity's parents separated sometime in her early childhood, and her mother Dolores ended up marrying a man who then became her stepfather named Roland Musso. Either way, there are reports that she did come from a close-knit family, and it seems that both sets of her parents were very active and present in her life throughout her upbringing and childhood. Serenity was born and raised in Winnipeg, Manitoba, though she spent different parts of her life, or she moved around quite a bit and spent different parts of her life across Canada in different reserves and First Nations communities. One of the communities she lived in was Peguis First Nations, which is the largest First Nations community in Manitoba with a population of around 10,300 people and is around a 2-hour drive away from Winnipeg. Then another reserve she lived on was George Gordon First Nation, which is a community in Saskatchewan, so I believe this is the only time she lived out of the province of Manitoba. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I believe. And then another place she lived was Pine Creek First Nation, which of course is another First Nations reserve in Manitoba, which is around a 4-hour drive away from Winnipeg. I believe, though I may not be 100% correct because there's not a lot of information about Serenity's childhood to verify this, so I'm kind of just drawing a conclusion, but I believe that she lived primarily with her mother at Powerview Pine Falls, which is a small town in Manitoba, at the time of her death in 2017. In remembering Serenity, her great aunt Barb said that she was a bossy child but grew up into a, quote, beautiful teenager who loved taking pictures and was very photogenic. By all accounts, Serenity was very outgoing and had a wide circle of friends. There's many pictures of her with family and friends at bonfires and parties. Her mother Dolores remembered how well liked Serenity was by her peers, saying, quote, she was a beautiful girl. She was friendly. She got along with everybody. She had a lot of friends. She was smart, yes, and she was compassionate towards people. In 2017, Serenity was on track to graduate that June and was currently a grade 12 student at Seguin Anishinaabe High School, which is located in Seguin First Nations, which was, of course, a First Nations community in Manitoba. Serenity and her family didn't actually live on the reserve, though. They lived in the neighboring town of Powerview Pine Falls while she was attending the high school. It's only about a 10-minute drive away from the high school. If you don't know, many Indigenous reservations throughout Canada are grossly underfunded by our federal and provincial governments, resulting in many of these communities not having schools, especially high high schools. So many Indigenous youth are forced to have to move either to larger Canadian cities or just other reserves where there are high schools if they want to complete their secondary education. I am unsure if this fact is relevant in Serenity's case, and that is what prompted her and her family to move to Powerview, but it could be and it could not be, I'm not sure. Just before her death, Serenity won second place at an animal calling contest that was being held at her high school. Her Aunt Barb said she learned the skill from her father, who took her hunting when she was younger. Serenity's mother said that Serenity had already started making plans for when she graduated high school, which included studying law and traveling. Her aunt expanded on this, saying that Serenity longed to work up north with her dad after graduation and, quote, longed to travel back to the mountains and explore the oceans and other exotic places. It appeared that Serenity was really looking forward to transitioning into young adulthood and had a lot of plans and dreams for her future, but this would all be cut short on April 2017. Serenity was last seen on Saturday, April 22nd, 2017, around 6 p.m. by a close family friend. She had planned that night to go to a house party on Siging First Nations. I'm unsure at what time she left for or arrived at that party, but she spent her last few hours of life there. Party was held at a small rundown house on the reserve. I couldn't find whether or not the house that the teens were partying at or occupying was currently being rented out or if it was an abandoned house. In pictures, which will pop up on the screen, it looks pretty abandoned and run down, but I'm not 100% sure if it's one of the teens' house or just an abandoned house in the community. It's been estimated that there were either 6 or 7 other teens besides Serenity at the house party that night, so it was a fairly small party, and that included 2 female attackers that would fight Serenity later on in the night. The names of those present at the party haven't been publicized because most of them were underage at the time, and Canadian law bans the publication of the names of underage people involved in crimes. But it is alleged and has been shared on many media platforms that another one of the teens present at the party was the boyfriend of one of Serenity's attackers. All reports have stated that all the teens at the party, including Serenity, were drinking heavily and that they had all brought with them various heavy alcohol to consume at the party, including spiced rum, tequila, vodka, and beer. Serenity's attackers were 2 teenage girls. One was 16 years old and the other was 17 years old. I cannot say their names in this video because their identities are protected under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, so I'll be referring to the 17-year-old as L and the 16-year-old as C. The 2 girls' identities have become pretty public knowledge, and a quick Google search will find who they are, but I'm obviously not going to be using them in this video. Witnesses at the party stated that Serenity and C, which is the younger attacker, the 16-year-old, began arguing. I believe both of them were already heavily intoxicated at this time. Most reports stated that they were arguing over alcohol, though there are other rumors and speculation online that attribute the fight to other things, such as Serenity being involved or having a crush on or talking to the younger girl's boyfriend or another girl at the party's boyfriend. These are not confirmed. This is just rumors and speculations from people in the community and just random people online. I'm just relaying to you the information and the facts in the case. But nonetheless, whatever the argument was about, the girls were both very heated at this time. The older of the 2 attackers, Elle, said that she tried to take Serenity to the bathroom at the house to try to calm her down because she didn't want a fight to break out. Witnesses then said that Serenity continued to be aggressive, so trying to calm her down had obviously failed, so they decided to kick her out of the party and they sent her out into the cold Manitoba night. Shortly after Serenity was was kicked out of the party, the 2 girls, along with 1 or 2 guys that can be heard in the video I will describe later, followed her out of the house to start fighting her. It's not clear who started the fight, and it hasn't been publicized online, but either way, it's pretty clear that Serenity became quickly overpowered by her 2 attackers in the video, and she was sent sprawling to the ground. One of the 2 girls, I believe the older one, Elle, began recording the beating on her cell phone. There are 2 short video clips that were then shared publicly later online of the fight. One was only 9 seconds and the second was 48 seconds. Serenity's family and friends, including her mother Dolores, have requested that no one watch or seek out the video or share it online because it is disrespectful to Serenity's memory and very traumatizing for them. I will not be including any audio or video from the clips of the fight out of immense respect for Serenity's family and friends and their wishes, which they have made extremely public, but I will briefly describe what happened in the video, and mostly the longer one, so you can get an understanding of the brutality of this violence against Serenity. I saw one report that said the 9-second video clip was just Elle stomping on Serenity's face repeatedly. The longer video, the 48-second one, is shot horizontally and starts on Serenity's face, which at this point is already badly bleeding. It's bloody and swollen. You can also hear Serenity moaning and crying in pain. She is repeatedly heard apologizing to the girls throughout the video in probably an attempt to get them to stop hurting her. At the beginning of the video, C, the younger attacker, is seen straddling Serenity to probably hold her down, like hold her arm down. Both C and L are heard throughout the video repeatedly threatening Serenity's life, saying that, you know, if you tell anybody about this or if you send anybody after us for doing this, we will kill you. You can hear a deeper voice around the middle of the video, most likely male in the background, so there are at least 1 or 2 other people watching the video. It's speculated that one of the people watching is Elle's boyfriend. C then asks Elle to take over, saying that she, quote, doesn't want to see Serenity alive. Elle then starts hitting Serenity repeatedly in the face a few times, and C, who in my opinion is obviously the primary or main aggressor in this situation, continues to slap, punch, kick, and stomp on Serenity's head and face. Towards the last 15 and 10 seconds of the video, Serenity completely stops crying or moaning. She's gone pretty much unconscious by this point, but C continues to beat her and punch her in the face. One of the males in the background of the video tries to get C to stop hurting Serenity at this point, saying, quote, she's done, but C doesn't stop and continues to viciously hit the unconscious Serenity, and then the video just stops. No one in the entirety of the video, no one that was watching the fight tried to intervene or stop C or L from hurting Serenity, even when she had clearly gone unconscious. Both of the girls in the video were wearing Timberland style boots, so they were very heavy duty, meaning that the kicking and the stomping would have been very painful and would have caused a lot of damage. The video, which I have never sought to view the uncensored version or the real version of it because I'm respecting their wishes and it's just not something that I feel like I need to see. I've mostly just listened to other people's descriptions of the video, but what I've heard and the little I've seen is very disturbing and heartbreaking. Even if Serenity was being aggressive throughout the night, there's nothing that warranted this level of violence, especially when she was already unconscious and obviously was the vulnerable one and couldn't protect herself from what was happening to her. If she had not died, this attack would probably have caused her severe brain damage. The extent of the beating is truly disgusting, and I'll get more into what the pathologist who did her autopsy found about the beating and her injuries from the beating. The two attackers and the boy that watched it then left Serenity lying unconscious outside of the house and went back into the house themselves, and they continued to drink until they eventually fell asleep. The weather in that area around that time, probably around midnight or a little before or a little after, was -2 degrees Celsius, which is below freezing. Elle said that she then locked the door to the house to prevent Serenity from entering back in or anyone else from entering back in, because she said she was afraid that Serenity was going to attack them again or bring someone else to attack them, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me because Serenity was unresponsive when they left her. There was a Snapchat taken of C at 1:12 a.m., presumably just shortly after the brutal beating took place. It shows her smiling and like throwing up a peace sign. You can see blood on her face and on her sweater, and the blood is presumably Serenity's. The caption on the picture says, "I've been chillin'." Elle then sent the videos of her and C beating Serenity to one or two people over Facebook Messenger. She also wrote to one of these people that she sent the videos to that she had stomped her out in relation to her assaulting Serenity. Elle would later allege that she brought up the idea of calling 911 or the police to get Serenity help, but the others that were still at the house party at this point shot the idea down, and her boyfriend took her phone away from her so she couldn't call police. Witnesses then say that Serenity's belongings were taken away from her, including her purse and her cell phone, so presumably that she couldn't call for help or call anyone. This is corroborated that when they find Serenity's body, none of her belongings like her purse and cell phone aren't found around or near her. At this point, the teenagers that were still at the house party then went to sleep, and no one ever went outside to check on Serenity. Then on Sunday, when Elle woke up, she messaged the person she sent the videos to on Facebook Messenger, asking them to delete the video and the messages from their history. Later that day, on Sunday, April 23rd, Serenity's family and friends began worrying about her when they hadn't heard from her all day. They said this was extremely out of character, and she was always in contact with someone updating about her whereabouts. Dolores then reported her daughter missing to Powerview RCMP around 6-7 p.m. that evening. A search, which included many Seguin residents, began immediately after Serenity was reported missing, and an elder from the Seguin community named Alma, she was a First Nations elder, she happened upon Serenity's deceased body only 2 hours after she was reported missing, I think just before 9 p.m. Her body was still pretty close to the house where the house party had taken place the previous evening, and as I said before, her belongings weren't found on her. By the following Monday, April 24th, 2017, the videos of Serenity's brutal beating had began circulating, and essentially all the students and peers at her high school had seen the video and were sharing it to their friends, both the 9-second clip and the 48-second one. They were initially posted to a public page, or the 9-second one was initially posted to a public page, which is when people began reposting and resharing it and saving it. Since people knew Serenity had been found dead, multiple students that were worried about the video reported its existence to their principal. The principal is a man named Claude Goumond. He said he watched the short video clip, and after identifying that it was indeed Serenity in the video, or that he believed it was Serenity in the video, he contacted RCMP to notify them of the video's existence.
I watched the video, and yeah, it was very It was very explicit. It was very brutal.
School principal Claude Guimond says students brought the video to him. He sent it to police.
I'm assuming pretty well most of the kids saw it. Yeah, because it's out there.
Someone informed Serenity's mother, Dolores, about the video. It's unclear if this is before or after the police were already aware of it, but I know it wasn't the police who told her about the video. So Dolores saw the video, or she came in contact with the video, and she said that she started playing it for just a few seconds, and then when she realized that she was watching her daughter's death, she immediately turned off the video. She was, of course, justifiably disturbed by the video and wanted it to be taken down immediately. The chief of Seguin First Nation contacted Facebook to get the video, or to get the platform to immediately remove the videos. Facebook immediately reacted and located and took down the shorter 9-second video clip, but told the chief that they were having a hard time locating the longer 48-second one and removing it, because it was primarily being sent through the Facebook Messenger app. It took Facebook 4 hours to locate and remove the longer video, but by this time it had already gone viral in the Seguin First Nation area and was spreading fast throughout the nation and would soon go international too. Of course, by this point it had been up for hours and many had already saved the video onto their phones. Facebook said they continued to work in the following days to try to get the video completely removed from the Facebook Messenger app. C had gone to school as usual that Monday, April 24th, but shortly after she arrived, she went to speak to the guidance counselor. She told the counselor that she had gotten in a fight with Serenity that weekend and gave her more details about what happened at the house party. The guidance counselor immediately contacted RCMP to inform them about the sort of partial confession that C had made to them. Later that Monday, C's father took her to the local police station so she could voluntarily turn herself in, and she was immediately taken into police custody. Meanwhile, Elle, the older of the two attackers, was also on her way to go to police voluntarily to discuss the events of the weekend, but before she went, she stopped at a friend's house to borrow a pair of boots. This friend later told police that Elle said that she was, quote, worried about going to the police with boots on because of the video. While first being interviewed by police after voluntarily going to the station, Elle initially claimed that she had left the house party while the assault on Serenity was still happening, but police then searched her car, which she had driven herself to the station in, and they found the boots that could be identified from the video of the assault, and she immediately changed her story, saying that yes, she was involved in the assault on Serenity, but it was in self-defense, and which I don't know how it could be if you see the video. Police then searched her car, which she had driven to the station in, and they found Elle's boots in the car, which were the ones that could be seen in the assault video. So Elle immediately changed her story after this, saying yes, she was involved in the assault on Serenity, but it was in self-defense, and that C was the primary aggressor. After they both voluntarily turned themselves over to police, both C and Elle were charged with second-degree murder and kept in custody. No one else who was present at the house party that Saturday night was ever charged with anything, a decision that many are critical of. Many believe that at least Elle's boyfriend should have also been charged in Serenity's death because he allegedly took the phone away from Elle when she tried to call police, and he was probably there when the assault was happening and didn't intervene or try to help Serenity in any way, and I agree with this stance. As the RCMP continued their investigation into Serenity's death, now with the possession of the electronics of the two accused, they found that in the day or two following Serenity's death, that both Elle and C had tried to sort of cover up their involvement in the murder. On Sunday, April 23rd, the day after the murder, Elle and her boyfriend went to visit one of the people that were also at the house party that night. They had left before the assault on Serenity had happened. They asked this person, both Elle and her boyfriend asked this person to essentially give them an alibi to police, asking the teen to say that the three of them had all left the house party together. Then when speaking to people she had ran into on that Sunday, C lied about the fight, stating that she had engaged in a fight with Serenity because she was being, quote, disrespectful, but that Serenity had gotten up after the fight, like she was still responsive and conscious, and she didn't know where Serenity went after, so trying to distance herself from Serenity's death and murder. There were also Facebook messages that were uncovered that were sent by C to Elle that seemed like she was sort of trying to come up with a cover story for what happened after she assaulted Serenity, or after they both assaulted Serenity. In the messages, which were sent at 12:04 a.m. on Monday, April 24th, C says, quote, "She was found dead, bro. Promise me, say when we fought her it wasn't that bad. Her nose was bleeding lots. Elle, I'm fucking scared. Promise me you won't tell him I fought her deadly. Please, bro. Say after we closed the door she left. She just walked away. Say, okay, because she wasn't around the house when they found her, I think." End quote. The RCMP, who were in charge of Serenity's death investigation, finally announced on Tuesday, April 25th, that they were treating her death in case as a homicide. And then they publicly announced 2 days later that they had 2 underage suspects in custody in relation to Serenity's homicide. A crisis response team, including grief counselors, was immediately sent to the Seguin Anishinaabe High School to sort of help the students mourn and cope with the loss of Serenity and the arrest of 2 of their peers. A vigil for Serenity was organized for Thursday, April 27th, and hundreds of residents of Seguin went out to support Serenity and her family for the vigil. One of the organizers, a resident of Seguin named Cheyenne Gumont, I'm unsure if this is the wife of the principal or just someone who has the same last name of her. I couldn't find the relation, but anyways, Cheyenne said that she hoped the vigil, which would also include a healing walk and smudging, would help heal the community. In the weeks or days following Serenity's death, a pathologist conducted an autopsy and a toxicology report on Serenity. The autopsy found 67 distinct injuries to Serenity's body that were, of course, caused by the assault, or were a result of the assault on her. There were 19 injuries to her head and face, which it seemed most of the assault was concentrated there. 2 injuries on her neck, 11 on her torso, and 35 to the rest of her body. The pathologist determined that Serenity's cause of death was hypothermia and listed blunt force trauma and alcohol intoxication as contributing factors. They also determined that the cause of death was homicide. Later, the pathologist would testify in court that the combination of the extensive injuries that she had sustained during the assault on her and her significant alcohol intoxication would have prevented Serenity from trying to seek out a shelter from the cold, which ultimately resulted in her dying from hypothermia. As I said before, the temperature that night in Manitoba was between -2 and -3 degrees Celsius, which of course was below freezing and would have been cold enough for someone, or for Serenity or someone else, to die from hypothermia fairly quickly. According to my quick Google search, death from hypothermia can occur as quickly as just 1 or 2 hours. Investigators and the medical pathologist couldn't determine what time or day Serenity exactly died, but it either was very late on Saturday, April 22nd, or very early on Sunday, April 23rd. Even after the 2 underage girls were already charged and arrested in the case, videos of Serenity's assault continued to go viral and circulate on the internet. Even YouTube creators on this platform started using using Serenity's death as just a form of content, reacting to the videos of her assault even after her family put out multiple public pleas for people not to share the assault. One small YouTube creator, who I won't be naming in this video as they have not been active on their channel in over a year, played a censored version of the video as he reacted to it. He said he was sharing the video to show the public the horrors of society and that he was anti-murder, which isn't everybody who's a rational human being anti-murder. That's the weirdest sort of sentiment I've ever heard. The video got over 200,000 views and is still up to this day, although it is age restricted, which that's the very least that it could be. I believe that he could have gotten the message he wanted across by just explaining what happened to Serenity and advocating for cases similar to hers. I don't believe you needed to use shock content to get that across, especially if it was something that her grieving family didn't want shared. In December 2017, Elle, the older of the two attackers, pled guilty to second-degree murder, and then the following month, in January 2018, C pled guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter. Crown, which is what the prosecution is called in Canada, stated that they were going to proceed with sentencing Elle as a youth because that was the agreement in plea negotiations, which meant that Elle would face a maximum of 7 years incarceration for her charges, but they were going to try to get C, who they viewed as the primary aggressor in Serenity's death. They were going to try to get her tried or sentenced as an adult. If she was sentenced as an adult, she would face a life sentence, but if the judge decided to sentence her as a youth, she would only face 3 years incarceration. Elle's sentencing hearing was first and began in April 2018, and both sides, prosecution and defense, were pushing for her to receive the maximum sentence of 7 years, but in different ways. Prosecution, Crown, was asking for Elle to be sentenced to 4 years incarceration and then 1.5 years of probation or community supervision, whereas Elle's defense lawyer, named Greg Brodsky, was asking for her sentence to be 1 year in jail and then the rest of the time, 6 years or whatever, in community supervision. Elle's defense presented various traumas and instances that he wanted the judge to consider as mitigating factors in her sentencing, including the death of her father in 2014. He had overdosed, as well as Elle allegedly being the victim of bullying and sexual assault. He also stated that Elle struggled with self-harm and substance abuse. Elle had also gotten pregnant while she was only 16 years old, which caused her to then drop out of high school so she could focus on taking care and raising her child. Elle also made a statement in court during the sentencing hearing directly addressing Serenity's mother, saying, quote, "There are no words to describe how sorry I am. This affects a lot of people. Dolores, I broke your heart. I can't imagine how much pain you are in and how much pain you have to go through. I am living every day with this guilt and shame. I want to do things in Serena's honor." Elle also said that she was struggling with reoccurring nightmares because of the assault. Her defense lawyer stated that Elle was showing remorse for the assault and death of Serenity, and that she had been a model prisoner since she had been incarcerated in a youth detention center in April 2017. The Crown countered this and argued that although she was now saying and showing that she was remorseful, that Elle was not remorseful about her actions on that night when it happened and the days following. The Crown detailed Elle sharing and bragging about the assault and the video of the assault to those she shared the video with. 32 victim impact statements were then read at Elle's sentencing hearing, including those from Serenity's mother, father, and even those who didn't know Serenity but had watched the video of the assault and experienced negative things from viewing that video. In her statement, Serenity's mother said, quote, "I dream about her. I wake up crying and sad that she is not here and wonder what she would have become in life. This has been a nightmare to me. How can an only daughter be replaced?" In his statement, Harvey, which was Serenity's father, said he forgives the teens involved and prays for them, but he also said, quote, "I will never get over what happened to my baby Serena." The judge who was presiding over Elle's case was Judge Rocky Polak. Elle's sentencing hearing lasted 2 days in a Manitoba courtroom. On Monday, June 4th, 2018, Elle was sentenced to 40 months in custody, which translates to 3 years and 4 months, and 23 months of community supervision. In his decision, Judge Polak said he was, quote, "ready to send the teen off to serve the maximum sentence behind bars because of just the sheer brutality of the videos, but ultimately factored in Elle's traumatic past and struggled with substance abuse in his decision." Dolores then said that she was relatively pleased with the judge's sentence because it was close to the 4 years that the Crown had been pushing for, though she had hoped that both of the girls would have gotten an adult sentence. Then C's sentencing hearing occurred later in June of 2018 after Elle had already been sentenced and sent to jail. This time the Crown and defense were asking for completely different sentences. Her defense lawyer James Wood asked the judge for Elle to be sentenced as a youth and to receive the maximum sentence for manslaughter as a youth, which would be 3 years without credit for time she had already served. The Crown was asking the judge to sentence C as an adult and give her a sentence of 7 years in custody. During the sentencing hearing, C's defense lawyer brought up her psychiatric assessment that she had undergone after being arrested and charged. This assessment found that she had, quote, "the moral capacity of an adolescent and was prone to poor decision making." She also had been diagnosed with PTSD and a substance use disorder. C had been sent to live in Seguin in 2016 by her mother. I believe her father lived on the reserve or in the community at the time, but not sure. It's not specified in the articles I read, but according to her defense attorney, she had been struggling with transitioning to life in the small community. Similar to Elle's lawyer, he brought up various past traumas that C had faced that he said would have contributed to her poor decision making, including trauma from being sexually assaulted. He said his client acted like a, quote, "panicked young person and should be sentenced accordingly as a youth." Wood also argued that his client wasn't the primary aggressor, which I beg to differ because the clips show her being way more aggressive than Elle and sort of taunting Elle to getting into it and all that jazz. Similar to Elle as well, C addressed Serenity's family in the courtroom while reading a statement to the court saying, quote, "I took what must have meant the entire world to you, Serena's gifted and blessed life. I can never be at peace with myself knowing what I've done. I despise myself every day for letting it get that far." The Crown, led by attorney Jennifer Comack, who had prosecuted both girls in this case, argued for an adult sentence, saying, quote, "When you watch those videos, you will not see an adolescent. You will see a woman full of rage beating on a helpless victim." Comack suggested that C actually had a completely different upbringing than the defense was trying to paint, saying that she was raised by her mother in a First Nations community in Calgary or near Calgary, and that she had an extremely good childhood. The Crown also said that C was raised to know right from wrong and had no apparent cognitive disabilities. As aforementioned, C was sent to live in Seguin when she was 15. C's mother said that she became rebellious after the move and started experimenting with drugs and alcohol and skipping school. By the time she was only 16 years old, she was living on her own. Similar to Elle's case, there were 26 victim impact statements read at the sentencing hearings, including one from Dolores, where she said, quote, quote, "Losing her is always in the back of my mind. I dream about her and I wake up crying and sad that she's not here." C's case was presided over by Judge Lindy Choi in a Manitoba courtroom. C was sentenced by Judge Choi on Thursday, August 2nd, 2018, who ruled to sentence her as a youth to 2 years in jail and 1 year of community supervision. In her decision, Judge Choi said that she decided to sentence C as a youth because she didn't have the moral capacity or blameworthiness of an adult. Serenity's family was understandably upset and disappointed by the sentencing. Her stepfather, Roland, began yelling at C after the sentence was read by the judge, and he had to be escorted out of the courtroom. Other families said things like "no justice" after the verdict was read. In a press conference after the sentencing, Dolores expressed her disappointment, saying, quote, "We expected an adult sentence and we didn't get what we deserved. My daughter didn't get what she deserved."
Everybody's really upset, and this was not the outcome that we expected at all. And I just have no faith anymore in the system.
By now, 2021, it's fair to assume that C has already served her 2-year sentence and has been released back into the community. L tried to petition the court for early release so she could enroll at the University of Manitoba, but her petition was rejected in August 2020 because Judge Polak, who was the judge who originally sentenced her, said she, quote, "still doesn't appreciate the significance of her consequences." He said that he does recognize that Elle has made some significant positive changes in her life, such as ending her toxic relationship with the father of her son. This was the boyfriend who was present the night of Serenity's murder and took her phone away from her when Elle suggested that they should call for help. Elle also received her high school diploma while incarcerated and was described as a role model during her time at the Manitoba Youth Center. She was transferred to an adult jail in November 2018, where she started a job in the laundry. But in his decision, Judge Polak also noted bad decisions that Elle had made while incarcerated, including forging the signature of a staff member at the youth center to get a letter mailed, tattooing herself, being involved in a group that refused to reply with lockdown rules, and being disciplined for not taking her medication. A probation officer said she was still easily misled by others, and then another staff member at the adult correctional facility that Elle was at in that time said that Elle struggles with self-acceptance and will give up her own values to gain acceptance from others. Judge Polak also referenced a sort of memoir that Elle had written during her time of incarceration about Serenity's murder and her involvement in the murder, which was titled, quote, "My Life Story." In it, she says, quote, "A couple drinks turned into a full week of binge drinking. Waking up on a Monday and finding out you were involved in a murder was so shocking. I couldn't remember much of that weekend, but watching a video a friend showed me was brutal. I sat back and denied it all because I'm not a violent person," end quote. The judge said that this document or memoir written by Elle shows that she still doesn't appreciate the significant role she played in Serenity's death and is still trying to distance herself from being culpable in it, which is ultimately why he denied her petition for early release. Serenity's high school granted her a posthumous diploma in June 2017, which is when she was on track to graduate with her class before her untimely murder and death. The high school also created a scholarship in her name. The community of Seguin still struggles with many social issues to this day, including having the highest number of cases of unsolved missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Canada, which is an issue I have talked about in previous videos, like the video of Ramona Wilson, who is still an unsolved murder. Cases from Seguin include the murder of Tina Fontaine in 2014, which is pretty well known and which I may do a video on one day.
She came here to teach us and we need to follow that change. She came here to teach us about the missing and murdered. This is number 12 that I'm aware of in Seguin, and everybody says it never should have happened, but it did. And we need to move on and heal now.
Then the former principal of Serenity's high school, Claude Goumond, who I mentioned previously in this video, he had been approached by multiple students about the existence of the assault videos and reported it to RCMP. Claude was charged with a double homicide in December 2018. The murders were committed in 2017. He also had been previously charged with sexually assaulting a minor. The victim was under the age of 16 in August 2018. The sexual assault / multiple sexual offenses were said to have occurred from September 1st, 2013 to June 20th, 2015. I'm unsure if this was a student at the high school he was teaching at or principaling at. It doesn't specify, but it does say that he was in a position of power over this young person, which is an additional charge. In the double homicide case, Goumond shot and killed two men, 43-year-old Jody Brown and 35-year-old Stephen Chevrefield. The two men were allegedly drug dealers in the area, and Goumond murdered them by shooting them after two of his own children started struggling with substance abuse issues. That's it for the brutal live stream murder of Serenity, Serena McKay. Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.
Well, it's been really, really unsettling with this whole case and with everything that happened to my daughter. You know, it's been really uneasy for all of us. It's been a really rough year, and, you know, we're just trying to cope. So, and like I said, we miss her every single day. And, you know, we know that we just keep praying that, you know, we know that she's in a better place and that she's free from all of the violence and the hatred and things out here that are still evident in society. And, you know, we know that we'll see her again sometime. So I just keep focused on that.